To the Cudler Report and our special series, The Free Market 12-Step Path to Prosperity. Tonight's focus, the government spending and regulatory disaster. Now, we just heard from Senator Judd Gregg on Step 1, which was a domestic spending freeze back to 2008 levels. Now, here's my second policy game changer, a constitutional limit on the size of government at 20% of GDP. It's been that way on average for the past 40 years. I don't see why we can't continue it. Mr. Obama has taken it up to 25%, and over the next 10 years, under optimistic economic assumptions, it stays at 24%. So let's get reaction from my proposal from our guests. We have a mixed bag tonight, and I appreciate it. We have Democratic Senator Byron Dorgan from North Dakota and Utah House Member Jason Chaffetz. Gentlemen, you're both terrific to do this. Senator Dorgan, I will start with you from the upper chamber. You're very nice to help us tonight. Why can't we have a constitutional limit of 20% for the federal government size and budget?
Well, we don't need a constitutional limit. What we need is some common sense in terms of dealing with our economic realities. You know, I understand that spending has increased, but you know, Larry, that when you go into an economic tailspin, as has happened to this country, you're going to have substantially lower revenues coming in. You're going to have substantially higher expenditures in order to try to pump and boost the economy some. So what we need to do, as you know, we've gone to war, not paid for a penny of it for the last 8 or 9 years. There are a whole series of things we've done that have been the wrong things as a country, and so now we need to get straight. I don't know that you need to change the Constitution to do so, but we need to straighten out this budget deficit. We need to tighten our belts on spending, and we also are going to need some revenue from those who aren't now paying their fair share.
You know, Mr. Chaffetz, I'm taking my cue from the Tea Party Contract from America, where they really emphasize constitutional limits, and they talk about restoring the consent of the governed. Now, you heard Mr. Dorgan. I want to get your take on that. Is such a thing possible, a limit, a constitutional limit to 20% of GDP?
Yeah, I'd like to see a balanced budget amendment. We're going to have to cap spending. The Congress has shown it has no discipline in capping spending. The government spending's out of control. And with all due respect to the senator, this additional stimulus spending is not driving the economy forward. We've had unemployment now in excess of 9% for 16 months. We were told by the president and the Democrats if we didn't implement the stimulus plan, we would get to 8%. Well, we've been over 9% for 16 months. So yes, we have a spending problem in this country, and it's insatiable. And the president now wants to spend an additional $50 billion. I'm in favor of a constitutional balanced budget amendment, and let's put some limit on the ability of Congress to actually spend money.
You know, Mr. Dorgan, I want to add to this, too, not necessarily constitutionally, although it may be decided in the courts. Normal business CEOs can take a budget and strike things from it. And I want to ask you, sir, why shouldn't the President of the United States have impoundment authority, the ability to impound excessive spending, or the line item veto, or to rescind, to have rescission authority on specific items? Why not put those back in, Senator Dorgan?
Well, I'd be willing to consider some of that. The president has some of those authorities, but let me make this point. You start out saying normal business practices. You know, and the congressman should know as well, that normal business practices would be that if you build an aircraft carrier or 10 miles of road, you would amortize the cost over the length of the life of the asset. In this government, with our accounting system, we have to expense it against the budget, all of it, the first year. What the president is talking about is an infrastructure investment bank, which makes good sense. And again, as the congressman just said, with due respect to the senator, let me say with due respect to the congressman, the day this president crossed the threshold and opened the door to the White House, he was stuck with an unbelievably bad economy. It was collapsing. It is now not collapsing, but we don't have the robust growth we need. What we need to do, Republicans and Democrats, is instead of deciding what we're going to block, try to figure out what is the right medicine and the right menu to provide some robust economic growth to this economy, and that's going to help solve a number of these problems.
Before I go back to Mr. Chaffetz, I want to put up on the full screen, we have a chart. It's a long-term chart of the federal budget as a share of GDP. And you can see on that chart, although it is cyclical during recessions and recoveries, it has basically averaged about 20%. Our chart goes back, I think, to 1970, and it is now at 25%. And Jason Chaffetz, what troubles me, there you can see the chart, we're reaching new highs. What troubles me is when you look at the Congressional Budget Office numbers, I was glancing at their midterm update, you're really holding at about 24% during the next 10 years, Jason, despite the fact that there is some kind of economic recovery, actually a rather optimistic one. Now, that tells me the risk is we are headed to a European-style approach. I want to ask you about things like impoundment authority to take funds out of the budget, rescission authority, and line-item veto authority.
I think there is a constitutional way to give the president a line-item veto. I would support that. I think Congress needs to be disciplined in being able to strike things out of bills and be able to reduce the overall expenditure of the bills. We're not going to spend our way out of these problems. We have grown government. We have not helped small businesses. The fact remains, since the president took office until now, there are 130,000 additional federal bureaucrats in the system. That doesn't count the census, the post office, or the military. These are federal bureaucrats. That's not the way to grow the economy. So the Democrats have taken us in the wrong direction. If we want to reinstitute the growth of this country and get jobs back on track, it's not going to be by more spending. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. We got to cut spending, and we got to give these tax breaks back to these businesses so they can go out and hire people.
Senator Dorgan,
it's so tiresome to hear this political nonsense. The Democrats this, the Democrats that. I mean, that's just so
Well, you have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and it's not working.
Well, so what do we want to do? We want to go back to the Bush years? Is that
no?
Because
stop saying Bush.
What he left
stop
us
saying
with.
George Bush and talk about economic reality.
We lived with the Bush economy for 8 years. Is that where we want to return to? I don't think so.
No, because he spent too much money. That's part of the problem.
The first month that this president took over, the last month of the Bush administration, remember, we lost about 700,000 jobs that month. Is that what we want to go back to?
Senator, you can't get through an economic discussion without mentioning President Bush. I want to look to the future. I want to cut capital gains. I want to reduce the corporate income tax. I want to accelerate the depreciation of capital purchases. These are the things that are going to drive the economy forward.
Go ahead, Senator.
I only mentioned the Bush economy because you decided to spend your time talking about Democrats this, the president that. I'm so tired of that. Let's find the best ideas that both parties have to offer this country and see if we can't lift this country up just a bit.
Oh, great. Let's cut spending. Do you agree with that or not?
Hey, listen, I'm somebody who believed that we ought to have been paying for these wars. And when I suggested...
I agree.
No, very few agreed with it because for 8 years we've sent kids in harm's way and not paid for a penny of it. That's the fact. And you know, we should not have done that as a country. We know better than that.
I agree with you. Do you want to cut spending, yes or no?
Well, absolutely. I just described to you. There are a lot of ways to cut spending, and I go to the Senate record and take a look at what I have proposed to cut spending.
That's why I'm opposed to the $50 billion stimulus. That's why I'm opposed to the $787 billion stimulus.
Well,
I don't think you are.
We're going to have to leave it there. I would just say, from my standpoint, in terms of my steps proposals, I think a constitutional amendment or a constitutional limitation, a constitutional backing, gentlemen, to me, that would really add force to the excellent debate that we're having and would cover everything, Senator Dorgan. You are correct, sir, and I think Jason agrees. Everything should come under that 20% lid. We did it for the last 40 years. Why can't we do it for the next 40 years? I guess that's my question. Senator Dorgan, last word.
And how about a little bipartisanship? Let's try to work together. I'm just a little tired of all of the partisanship around here and blocking everything. Let's try to find the best ideas, the best medicine we can to lift this country up.
Bipartisanship, Jason?
Amen. Let's do it.
All right. Senator Byron Dorgan, thank you ever so much, sir. Representative Jason Chaffetz, appreciate it. Coming up on Kudlow, a fracking nightmare for the natural gas industry. That's right, fracking, as the EPA sets its sight on more regulation. Are we over-regulating ourselves into oil dependency? Are we over-regulating ourselves into economic abyss? The details and the debate coming up next.